Hello again, it's Suzanne from Suzy Q Crafts, and I'm with you today doing a tutorial for Dr. Digi House of Stamps, and we're going to be using the Cosmo-Nut stamp today and the pre-coloured moon. I've printed out already onto my blended cardstock. I'm going to be making a 7x7 card. This is the moon, which is pre-coloured, and I'm going to cut that out later. It's just smooth printing card. I'm going to start by making my own background today with a salty ocean, pistachio, stormy skies, and black soot. Now I use these duster brushes from Inkalicious, and I tend to have one for every colour shade that I'm doing. So I have one for my blues, one for my greens. They're double-ended, so I keep one for black and white only. You can wash them out, it's entirely up to you, but I tend to keep them all to sort of one colour. And I'm going to start with my blue. What you want to do is you want to take off some of the colour, so don't just tap your brush onto your ink pad, you actually wipe it over, taking off some of the colour. And I'm using the Tim Holtz glass mat for blending onto today, because you can really wipe it clean, it's so easy to do. So I'm taking the blue, starting off the edge of my piece of cardstock. This is Anna Marie Designs cardstock, and it's cut 6.5 by 6.5 inches. So I'm going to do the blue in a couple of different areas, just blending it over. These brushes do tend to molt a bit, so I brush the pieces out every now and again. Coming in with my stormy sky. Once again, taking the colour off, so I don't change brushes at the moment because it's another blue tone. So I keep my blues for my blues. And to create my background, it's going to be a galaxy background, so I'm just taking those in different areas of my cardstock. Not covering it completely at the moment, just laying the blues down in different areas. Now I'm going to switch brushes to my green brush. As you can see, it's not the same shade of green. This is kind of a moss green that I've used before, but I'm using cracked pistachio. And I'm just blending that into my white areas. So I'm not blending it all the way, just on the edge of my blue, in different areas of my cardstock. Now you can do this design with many colours. The purples work really well, the pinks and the blues work really well together as well. One of my favourite things is mermaid backgrounds and the galaxy backgrounds. So I'm speeding it up for you here because we're doing exactly the same procedure over and over. Now along the edges I'm going in with my black soot. I do come into the cardstock a little bit because I don't want the black edges and then just a blue-green middle. So I bring my black soot across. Wiping off all the excess bristles. I'm giving my mat a quick spray with a water spray and wiping off with a clean dry cloth. It's so easy to clean up. If I was working on paper right now, I'd have to throw that paper away. But with my mat, I can just spritz it and wipe that off. So I'm happy with my background, with my colours. I'm going to take my water spray and I'm going to spray some water onto my hand off screen so that I don't spray it directly onto my piece. And then I flick the water from my hand onto my piece of inked up cardstock. You can get different effects. If you move your hand further away, you get smaller dots. Move your hand closer, you get the bigger splashes. I'm taking a clean piece of kitchen towel and I've just smoothed that down to dry and take off that excess water. And you can see what it does. These are Distress Oxide inks, so the water reacts with the ink and bleaches out some of the inked up areas. So I'm going to go in and do that again until I'm completely happy. When you've got different layers of oxide inks, what it does is take off the first layer so that the second layer shines through. And then the longer you leave it, the more that it reacts. So I'm going to leave this one a little bit longer. As you can see, there's different splashes all the way over. You don't concentrate in one area. Make sure they're really random, off the edge, different areas. I'm going to lay my kitchen paper towel down, dab off the excess water and lift straight up. Now I've turned that kitchen towel over, you can see where it's lifted that ink up onto the kitchen towel. I'm pretty happy with that background. You can see where it's just a little bit wet, so I'm going to dab that off a little bit more. I really like the effect that this does. If you was doing a mermaid background, the ink splashes look like water. Now this is my Picket Fence White Distress Paint. And I'm going to give that a shake and place some onto my mat. Anything wipes off of this mat. I do have reflection issues when I'm doing the filming, which is a little bit of a problem. This is my Tim Holtz splatter brush. Now I didn't think I needed one of these because I normally use a toothbrush and flick my paint on. Technical error here, trying to squeeze it out without actually taking the seal off of the paint. If you unscrew the lid, there's actually a seal inside the paint canister. It's got a ball bearing inside, so give it a good shake to mix up that paint, and you only need a tiny bit. So I'm dipping in my splatter brush just on the ends, and you turn your splatter brush to the side and lift the particles so they knock against each other. And this creates tiny flecks of our white paint, like tiny little stars in our galaxy background. So you can do it over and over until you're happy. If you want to thin the paint down, you can do. But I like the fact it just dries a little bit raised up. Not much, but like a thick acrylic paint. It's definitely a lot less messy than using the toothbrush. I do like my splatter brush now. So I'm happy with that. I've got my little stars you can see there as I tilt my piece of work. A quick spritz with some water and we can just wipe that clean. So everything comes clean off. I'm not, by the way, getting any commission from Tim Holtz for his glass mat. I just really do like it. I think it's a great surface to work on, very easy. So I'm going to leave that off to dry and then I'm going to work on my next piece. Now this is the board I normally use for my Copic colouring. It's a magnetic board and they come from WH Smith's in the UK. They're normally on offer, buy two, get one free, or buy one, get the second one half price. Because I like to sit and colour of an evening in front of the TV or a film, and I find it really easy just to attach that to my magnetic board. This is the piece we created earlier, which is nice and dry. I'm going to put that to one side. And this is the pre-coloured moon by Dr. Digi. That's really difficult to say. This is Cosmo-Nut, printed out on my blended cardstock. Now I'm going to be using a range of cool greys from C5, C3, C1 and C0, and possibly a bit of C7 as well. So I'm going to start mid-range with my C3. And I'm using the brush tip end. I'm just laying down my colour. I always colour from dark to light. It's really difficult when you're doing a video tutorial to actually see where I'm actually colouring because of your hand in the way and everything like that, but hopefully this will help you. So I'm laying down my colours, C3, C1 and then C0 to blend it out. Creating where I want my shadows to be and my highlights to be. And I always work from the outside in, so if I'm colouring, you always colour one section at a time, whether it be the helmet or someone's hair, face. My favourite thing to colour is flesh. And I'm going to colour up this image in the little spaceman in a series of the cool greys, the little spaceship or pod in some warm greys, and then I'm going to bring in some colour. Spacemen probably don't have any colour on them, but I'm going to bring in my green and my blue to add a little bit of colour to him, which also picks up the colour in the background. Now I don't normally cut my images out, I normally colour them up and add a little background to it, either with my Copics or by brushing in with my Distress inks on the corners and sides. But today I'm actually going to cut this little man out because the galaxy background that I've created I really like. So I'm going to cut him out with some scissors and a craft knife, and I'm going to pop him onto my card last of all with some silicone gel. Now I'm going to leave you here with this bit of colouring, and later on I speed it up for you, but I'm just showing you real time how I lay down my colours. And always blend in the previous colour with the next colour. So I'm blending out my C3 with my C1 and then my C1 with my C0. Always colouring as well in the shape that I have in front of me. So at the moment I'm colouring the glass in his space helmet. So I'm colouring in the direction of the space helmet, not up and down, not across, but actually round, curved round to the top, curved round to the bottom. Later on in the video, towards the end, I'm going to go in with a white gel pen and add some of my highlights to create a reflection. And this is Blended Cardstock by Make It Crafty. I really like this cardstock. This is one that I use for when I'm teaching a class because it's quite easy to handle. When I'm doing some of my larger images, I use graphic paper by Polka Doodles. It's a thinner cardstock, takes a little bit more practice to use, but I really like the end result. Now I'm speeding this up for you. I think it took me overall about an hour to colour this image, so not too long. One of my quicker pieces. With this design, I'm not thinking too much about where the light direction is coming from or anything like that. Kind of colouring with my darkest shadows towards the centre of everything, and then the light on the tops of the fingers, the tops of the suit, the edges of the boots, and the top of his helmet. So I suppose the light's kind of is shining from the moon above us. And with the suit, the hands and the feet, I'm going in with my C7, C5, C3, C1 and C0. In some of the smaller areas, I'm only doing C7, C5 and C3, just because there's some quite tiny areas, so you haven't got the full area to, a large enough area to use your full range of colours in there. When I do a video tutorial for Dr. Digi, I get to choose the images that I want to colour, and I really love this little guy, and I already thought in my head what sort of galaxy background I could create with my distress oxides. I randomly go up into my art room and just create some backgrounds. So I'm working on the boots now, the darker colour, followed by C5 and C3, just blending out, always going back over my last colour and blending into the next colour. Copic colouring is all about pushing and pulling, and you'll hear people saying, oh, have you got your flicks right and things like that. Flicks are more for doing hair and fur, things like that. But it is to do with pulling your colour. So you pull your darker colour into your light colour, and that's how they blend together. The blending pen doesn't blend, it bleaches out. So if there's any tiny errors that you have on your work, you can actually use the chisel end of your blended pen, which is a 0 pen, and push your colour back in. It doesn't work on all colours, mainly the lighter ones. It's not very good on black, blue and red, but it does work on some of the cool greys, warm greys and the lighter tones of colours. So you can actually push any errors or bleeds back into your work. Also be careful when you're working on section to section. I tend to divide my sections up and not work on the ones close together unless they're the same colour. So if you was doing flesh and you was doing hair, I always do my flesh first and then my hair after, but I would wait a good while before I do that, just in case I pull any of the flesh tone into the hair and the other way round. Now I'm moving into my little spaceship by the side of him, and just behind him, just creating a little reflection on the window with my cool greys before moving on to my warm greys. I'm just putting 2 little lines in to add a little reflection line, and we'll go back in with my white gel pen at the end to create some light. I'm blending that out into the whole of that window. There we go, that's all our cool greys done. Now moving on to our warm greys. So I've got W5, W3, W2 and W1. So I'm using my W5, laying that mid-tone down first. I'm colouring the bottom of the spaceship, so I'm coming from left to right and right to left, always leaving my highlight in the middle there. Now I've speeded this up for you, every process is the same. Just taking the darker W7 and putting a line at the bottom of my spacecraft. Please feel free to subscribe to my channel over on YouTube, which is Susie Q Crafts. There's lots of other videos on there, distress oxide videos, mermaid backgrounds. I have another galaxy background one on there, and also some Altenew videos as well. Different techniques in the classes I teach and card making. When you subscribe, if you hit the bell, it also alerts you to any new videos that come along. Just finishing up on this little spacecraft part of this particular picture. So we've got the cool greys on the little spaceman outfit, and I'm now using the warm greys on the spacecraft. I love the difference between the two. I use a lot of warm greys when I'm creating backgrounds behind my Copics or to ground a person. A little bit later on, I'm going to add some colour. I'm going to bring some blues and greens in to blend my background colour in as well. It's just a case of taking one section at a time. I always work on one section, colour it in fully, and then move on to my next section. When the Copic pens are wet, so when it's wet down on your surface, wet on wet blends a lot better. If you do get called away, you can go over something. If you go over it with your last colour and then carry on, it's not something that if you go away from is completely ruined and you have to start all over. You can actually go back to where you left off with your colouring. We've got a bit of light reflection now in the matte. The weather outside is absolutely awful, and I actually do all my colouring outside. I have a craft cabin at the end of my garden, and the noise from the roof and the guttering at the moment is actually quite scary. As you can see, that's all coloured in now, it's all finished. So we're going to move on to the next part with adding some blue and green in. I've chosen B32 and B34. And I'm just going to go over his little harness thing, his little belt. I'm sure spacemen probably don't have this blue and green at all, but I just want to incorporate this into my design, so I bring in the two background colours. So I've just finished off my blue, now I'm going into my green, which is my G's, my G20, and then my G24. And just a tiny bit on that middle section of his little suit. And I'm going to cut this whole image out. As I said before, I don't do that normally, but it's a shame to use all of that background. These are my other elements that I cut out earlier. There's the little spaceman, the moon, and we have a greeting, which I've cut on black. We now have the dried background, and I'm going to mount that onto a black of Anna Marie Designs cardstock. I just do small L shapes in the corner. It's just enough to hold it, and then the cardstock doesn't buckle. It's the Collal clear glue, which actually is completely clogged up on me, and my new pots are up in my other craft room, which is in my loft area. So I've just taken some of the glue out and put that on a piece of paper with one of my nail sticks. They're actually nail cuticle shaping sticks. I use those loads. Or McDonald's stirrers, they work really well as well. So I'm going to mount that onto my 6x6 card. This is a 7x7 card actually today. Yeah, it's a 7x7 card, sorry about that. Same again, small L's in the corners. And I do a really thin mat behind my work. So I've got the thin white edge that you can see, which is our main cardstock. Then we've got the black, and then our created piece of blended cardstock. Now I'm going to glue the moon down flat onto my blended cardstock. And I'm going to glue down my to the moon and back as well. I'm just going to take my white pen and add some highlights. Just on the corners of the O and then the N. I normally do just a little dash and then a dot. It just gives a little bit of dimension to the greeting. So I'm going to glue that flat down just under the moon. And just add in some highlights where the sun may be, or the earth is reflecting off that little spaceship. I'm going to add some little highlights to the glass in his helmet as well. So I'm just laying out where I think everything's going to go. I'm going to glue on my greeting. Just making sure you haven't got too much glue on there so that it squeezes out. Just need a small amount. If it starts to lift, just take your nail shaper and pop a bit of glue just underneath where it's not quite sticking. And there we go. I'm going to pop some silicone, pea-sized amounts, on the back of my little space mat, and I'm going to pop him on there a little bit later. Thanks for watching.